And so I have like buddies of mine who'll be like, she's not really that good. And I was like, I want you to know I don't tolerate, like I have a jersey, I don't tolerate disrespect.
Well, the thing, you should tell your basketball story and then we can talk about that.
No, I have to, okay, what do you got?
Well, I agree. She has set a new bar,
sure.
Especially yesterday, literally set a new bar.
Right.
There are so many other good players, like Hidalgo from Notre Dame was incredible yesterday. Juju, the two of them, one of them's getting freshman of the year for sure.
Juju.
I would say.
I don't know. Hidalgo yesterday was insane.
When you break a Cheryl Miller record, I kind of feel like you're locked in.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Like Cheryl is the bar for bucket.
Hidalgo's
right,
definitely being discussed.
No. I'm not saying she's not.
Cardozo from South Carolina, she is really good.
Cardozo's a great baller. Hooper.
If I make the leap to the NBA, it's like Chet Holmgren and Wembanyama. Like Chet is good, but you just came in at the same time Wembanyama is here.
Keep it to women's ball. Caitlin came in the same year as Paige Buchers.
I was just talking about Paige.
Yeah, but she got hurt. Right. They played together.
They did, and like one, they were co-rookies of the year.
Yeah.
But one was the player of the year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now for me, that's difficult. If you are at the same level as the other person for rookie of the year, well then you should have been co-play. That's strange to me.
She blew her knee out.
Oh no, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Paige isn't good. I'm saying that particular year, it's weird to me to tell me I'm on par with you for rookie of the year, but you're that much better than me for player of the year.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make any sense. But the women's game is in a great place right now.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You know what I mean? Like there's so many talented folk.
Stolke yesterday too, also really good.
This is going to sound controversial and provocative, but it's also because of what have happened in the men's game. Like no one stays. Like and even though they're freshmen, watching men's college basketball is not entertaining.
It's not. The women's college basketball is so fundamental.
It's not. It's not the fundamental.
It's not the same.
Right?
It's fun to watch.
And part of
they actually run plays.
And this is the thing. Steve Kerr was just saying this yesterday.
Yeah.
He was like, "We are now doing what college coaches used to do for our players in the NBA. They're not ready. They need 4 or 5 years to actually get the fundamentals, understanding of the game. They just get there on talent, not really understanding the game."
Well, that's why I think it's. The fact that Caitlin Clark is now decided that she's going to go up for the draft makes total sense to me. To not play another year.
I think the Pistons should take her.
The Pistons should take you and I at this point.
No. You know what though? I feel like because of the losing streak, everyone's been focused on them. They have the same record as the Wizards right now.
I know.
What the Celtics? What happened to Golden State yesterday? 140 points to 88.
I want you to know that as a Knicks fan, there's something I have to say. It's very important.
For the season.
God bless.
No. I hope he does all right. Right, everyone's hurt for the Knicks right now. But this is I've always said I like this Celtics team. Right, I would never cheer for them because I'm a Knicks fan. But I like Jason. I like Jalen. Drew Holiday. It's hard not to like him. Everyone besides Porzingis.
The two of them.
I like because I don't. You know what I'm saying. But what's really difficult for me with this team is they've been really good for years.
Yeah, they can't finish.
What they've done now is ridiculous. They've taken a leap somehow, right? But they've been really, really good for years.
Yeah.
And so at some point, you run out of excuses. Right? First, it was that your two best players were really young, and people said, that's cool. Even though they got to the finals really young, totally fine. Right?
Yeah.
Then you have a season like last year, right? Jason's having 50-point games, East Conference Finals, and you're getting smoked, right? Golden State, you got smoked. Yeah. And so if they don't deliver this year,
I'm with you, bro.
Right? Well, I'm kind of like, all right, there's nothing else for you.
Do you feel the same way about Iowa and Caitlin Clark?
Sort of, because I don't think that Iowa dominates at all like that, right? Like South Carolina's undefeated, right? South Carolina's a team second time back-to-back undefeated during the regular season.
That was a good game yesterday,
right?
too.
So I can see where people can go, look, South Carolina, you got to deliver on this, right? That's sort of different. To have this level of dominance, candidly, we haven't seen it before. We haven't seen a team win 3 games by 50 points in a season like that.
This is
right. You haven't seen a team where any starter can go off for 20 points. And that could be their night.
Right.
Like this team, there's no other team built like this.
Pritchard had 19 points yesterday.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no other team built like this in the NBA.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there should be no excuse this year. This is it.
So we could jump in, but
I still want you to tell your city basketball story though.
Oh yeah.
We interrupted.
Oh, my bad. No, it's super quick. It's just this. One of the guys on the who plays, older guy, he goes, something told me you would appreciate this. And one's like, I want you to see my cell phone. This is his cell phone.
Oh, yeah.
That is amazing.
To this day.
It is a Nokia.
To this day.
I need it.
Right?
His life is so good.
And so I had...
He probably has better cell reception on that than any of us.
It's 2G, right? And because that's what emergency lines use, it still works, right? He just changed the battery. And of course, I asked only 2 questions. And though they weren't like, why do you have this, whatever, he was like adamant, I have never sent a text message in my life, which I thought was fascinating.
Right.
And so my 2 questions were, 1, is your ringtone samba?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Goat ringtone, right? And number 2, how often do you play Snake?
Of course.
Because
oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
that's the only reason to really have that phone still. And he said, often. And I was like, good.
Also,
man.
can he find a charger for that phone?
He has the same charger.
Oh my god! Because the iPhone
Still
chargers,
works, right?
Ugh, you got to buy one of those every 2 months.
Yeah, because they're flimsy.
They're flimsy.
They are flimsy.
And then they change constantly.
Silly.
Lee. Well, we're not getting a sponsorship from Apple anytime soon.
I think part of the Celtics being where they are, right? Positionless basketball, that to me was being set up by Brad Stevens when he was at Butler. If you go back and watch those teams, every one of them could shoot the 3, could play. They were interchangeable. They could screen and pick everything and switch everything.
They actually play. Yeah.
And that's how Butler was able to get to the championship, right? They're like, bro, what are you doing here? How you playing Duke? What are you doing?
Big shout out to Gordon Hayward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now he's in Phoenix. Oh, no, he's in Oklahoma City.
I don't even know.
Oklahoma City, who's number 1 in the West.
Also, big shout out to Shelvin Mack. I feel like he doesn't get enough love on that team.
That's true, bro.
Right? He was the guard,
was a
holding it
beast
down.
out there.
He was doing it.
He was a monster.
Doing it,
He was.
I love that. I love basketball. I wish I were I told Marrio earlier, had I not chosen to be a nonprofit leader, I did kind of, I wanted that. I didn't choose it per se, but I should have been a college basketball coach. Pat Summitt was my hero.
Oh,
I could see it.
I could do that.
And Muffy from Notre Dame.
Of course.
The woman from, what's her name, from Stanford?
She got the loudest
And now Notre Dame
does
coach,
have some wild
she's really
blazers.
good. That was a great game yesterday. Ivy, I think her last name is. Just so good. Yeah. Oh, Don Staley, obviously.
And
of course.
Philly.
I mean,
And you could play ball in heels.
Looks like a pump, feels like a sneaker. Second episode of saying that tune. Easy Spirit.
oh no, I listened. I listened. I get the reference. No, I get the reference.
What is that?
I remember you
there's
asking.
so much about that commercial that is so good and so wrong at the same time.
Oh, and shout out to my people at Chelsea Opportunity Academy. I'm rocking their swag today.
That's a
They
nice
doing good
shirt,
stuff. Yeah, man. My people up there.
You know, I bought towels this weekend this color of your pants.
Oh, is that right?
I feel like
Mustard?
when you start noticing things like goldenrod is it's just coming into my lens. Goldenrod.
Yeah.
I'm gonna name it as the color of the year.
Well, I relish the opportunity.
All right, we should get going, Mario.
We're not recording yet.
We are.
happening
Yep.
probably.
Oh, we are.
definitely
Okay. All right. I'm gonna save. Okay.
I'm gonna say right now, Iowa doesn't win the championship. I'm saying it right now.
Yeah. No. For sure.
All right.
Definitely not.
You don't think so?
No.
No.
South Carolina?
No.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely difficult to win a championship when you have one player that the offense is running entirely through. Right? As good as Davidson was to watch, you knew that eventually the right team could shut down Steph. Right? Insert any player like that. Like you can't win that with you have to have a great player with a solid team around them, right? The South Carolinas before, the Tennessees before, Stanford, right? You have a stellar standout, or your UConn with 5 of those.
Stolke could help that team a little. Yeah, she's got. Yeah,
I just don't know that they're going to be enough when they come up against a South Carolina.
I agree. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my gosh, everybody. Welcome to the Ripple Effect, where the little drops start before the start of the podcast. I am your co-host, Marybeth Campbell, CEO of Worcester Community Action Council, joined by...
The Aggressive Pedestrian, also known as Ron Waddell, co-host and founder and executive director of legendary Legacies.
And I think this is this first episode of season 2? Should I not date us? Because we might be moving some things around, but we are joined by the great Ché Anderson.
Yeah. What award didn't the brother get?
Man, listen, I got a list of awards I didn't get. I'll tell you that. I'm not holding vendettas against nobody, but it's a couple out there.
Anything? Well, we don't have to get into that.
No.
Yes,
But
we're
well versed, man.
Yeah, you've been
City of Worcester employee, cultural director on the Mass Cultural Council, executive committee member of the Greater Worcester Community Foundation. I'm sure I'm missing some other withdrawals.
Man, listen, I want you to know that when I got into Worcester, I said I want to get involved, and I stood on that. You know what I mean? Like I try to be as present as I can with the time and energy I have, and so thanks to Mechanics Hall and the Historical Museum for having me on their board, and the United Way for having me on theirs, and shout out to the last 2 governors for putting me on sort of gubernatorial councils, which is insane.
It's a lot of volunteerism
For sure, yeah.
It's a lot of time and commitment.
Yeah.
Well, you make an impact and do dope stuff.
That's the goal, brother.
Yeah.
That is
the
always
payback.
the goal.
That's
Yeah.
the payback, yeah. Well, tell us a little. We like to sort of initiate with origin story, and you can start from any point you like.
This is the one time you'll get to like talk about being a Knicks fan.
Yeah, there'll be no razzing.
Not get razzed
We
up,
won't
so-
razz because we had the '90s Celtics, so we won't razz.
Yeah.
But
I mean, always shout out to the Knicks. You know what I mean? It's hard growing up as a Knicks fan, but I love the team's doing well. Shout out to Tibbs and everybody else doing great things out in New York. So I'm from New York City, New York. It's always important for me to represent that. Amsterdam Projects, shout out to you. I want to shout out my mom and my grandma,
Yes.
Lisa and Dolores, who raised myself and my little brother, and really raised us with the idea that it was not only important but essential for us to get involved in what's happening in our community. To go out and try to be leaders as best as we could as young Black men. And so that led me through public schools and Catholic schools in New York City.
you're also a Catholic school.
I did.
Kid, me too.
I did. I jumped between the two, right? Like I went to a Catholic and public elementary. I went to a public and Catholic junior high school, and then just Catholic school, but two different high
We have a
schools.
similar path in that way.
And then I came out to Worcester to go to the College of the Holy Cross. So went Jesuit there, and then never left. Right, like which is
Retention numbers.
yeah, exactly. It was one of the most interesting decisions because I candidly thought I was going to be in Worcester for like a year. That was the plan when I graduated college, that I was going to stay here for a year and then go off and do something else in another sort of big metropolitan city.
Had you started? I mean, I know Holy Cross has community engagement, obviously, but had you started doing work with the city or in
No.
the city as a undergrad?
No, so when I was a student, so much of my priorities were on campus, right? It was about developing multicultural sort of competency and awareness on our campus. And so I did a lot with admissions, with housing, prospective students. I was a multicultural peer educator. We started a group called the Brother to Brother Committee, talking about the difficulty of being Black and brown men in predominantly white spaces. As teenagers and as young 20-somethings, trying to figure out how we navigate what's next in life. And so that was a main priority of mine. And so we would do, a couple of things here and there off campus. What really got me involved off campus, oddly enough, right? Linda Cavioli from the YW used to love this. We would do this affirmation all the time as young Black and brown men. And as part of that, we did this poem that was called Black Man Rising, right, by James H. Chapman, pretty much talking about the versatility that we have as Black men. And we performed it at the Stand Against Racism. Mm-hmm. And then people started booking us to sort of, and by say booking, I mean loosely, we didn't get paid, but we were asked to perform around the community. And that was how most people that were around got to know me as like a 21-year-old.
Gotcha.
And then when I decided to stay, some of those folk were like, hey, you're here, come get involved. And so my first committee was the YWCA Stand Against Racism Committee, where I got to serve and then eventually become their co-chair for a couple of years. And that was sort of how the civic engagement started initially.
Wow, got you right in there.
Yep. And so during that, I worked at MCPHS University, doing student activities and affairs. And then a sort of chance conversation with, at the time, interim city manager Augustus, where I was asking him to present at the school. And he was like, great, you should come work here. And I said, I'm kind of planning on getting out of here. And he said, I'm not going to be here too long. You should work here.
Right,
And I thought it was going to be a few months. And then, 6.5 years later, I was still working at the city.
Yeah.
What were you doing at the city?
So initially I was hired as a staff assistant, which means they didn't have a plan for me. I think
Special
right?
projects.
That was it. I think he just saw that I was sort of young, full of energy, and sort of willing to get involved. And candidly, I think that he was looking for more like a body guy, like someone who could just be around them when he's at important meetings, sort of having conversation, you can hand cards to, that kind of thing. And I was just a really ambitious sort of 20-something. And so over time, he's having conversations, I'm trying to have conversations. That wasn't the right role for me. And they said, you know what? You have experience putting on events. We need to revamp our special events process. And they made me the special events coordinator for the city. And that parlayed not only my love of event sort of planning and making, community building, but also my love of the arts tied into that. And then eventually to a project manager and then to the deputy development officer for culture for the city. So finding ways to connect the city to cultural institutions, but also to cultural organizations, entities, people who are sort of pushing different initiatives in the community.
So Ché, you my dude, bro. You my man. And so I said this to Marybeth before you came in, and she was like, "You should prep him." I was like, "Nah, that's my guy. I'm just gonna ask him."
Yeah,
confident that you'll be fine answering this question.
That's all good. I'm gonna give him a chance, right? Because you've been at Worcester for a while, and so I want to give you a chance to talk to the listeners about, and even me, because sometimes I'll be like, "All right, bro, there's a lot of issues. Why should we invest in art?"
That's an amazing question. And I'm happy you asked that question.
Do you wish that we sent it on Friday?
No. I'm so happy you posed it that way, right? Right. So at this point, I've been able to do things on a local level artistically, right? I serve with Michael Bobbitt, shout out to Michael and the team for the Mass Cultural Council, right, at the state level. But I've also been able to do projects sort of domestic and abroad within the arts. And something that I find really fascinating is that when times are at their most difficult, we as individuals turn to arts and culture, right, for solace. We turn to it in times of solitude. We turn to it for happiness, for joy, right? We turn to it in times we don't even recognize we turn to it. You go into a sporting event and you got to figure out which team memorabilia piece you're going to put on, right? Because it has to match the hat or it has to match your shoes, right? That artistic direction was done by somebody creative. Without you even thinking about it, you're making creative choices or things that are adjacent to arts and culture, right? And so on one level, there's that, right? On another, arts and culture is the lifeblood of any community, right? And I know that is a broad stroke of a statement, but I stand on it, right? When you go to a new community, the first things you want to know, you're asking cultural questions. What is this place about? Where can I eat, right? What communities are present here, right? What sorts of things do you put value and stake into, right? That's a cultural question, right? What places should I go to? What places should I see? Quite often, you're finding museums, you're finding galleries, you're finding artistic expressions like murals or sculptures, sculptural parks in a community. That's the stuff we seek, right? Because it feeds us differently. It nourishes our souls. And so I think that when we talk about why arts and culture is important, right? It's only important if you want your soul fed, right? If you're kind of running around soulless, then I mean, it might not be your thing, you know what I mean? And even subconsciously, I would disagree and say it is. But I think that candidly, it is the thing that pushes us forward as a community, whether it be through conversation, discussion, or just trying to find a peace of mind.
Got you.
Yeah.
Well, that's the answer, people, right there.
Yeah,
that's why you should invest in art. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's another outlet.
Absolutely. Well, not only that, the with Ché saying that it advances, and what I appreciate is this, right? Like, you do, as far as solace goes and those types of things. You put on music.
Yeah.
Right. You it doesn't have to necessarily be sitting looking at an art piece of visual art, but music is art. Creativity, all those things can be outlets in the midst of a lot of heaviness that folks are dealing with.
There's no difference of someone that might need housing may also need that outlet too. Yeah.
Valid.
Yeah.
Valid. Yeah. So now you do the art thing.
Yep.
At the city, but that's not where you are now.
No,
not doing that anymore. Yeah.
So I did that for almost 7 years, and then in 2020, in the times of the early aughts of the pandemic, it was sort of time for a change. It was time for something different, and so I started looking and seeing sort of what may be possible for myself. And candidly, I got a phone call that UMass, at the time UMass Medical School, now UMass Chan Medical School, was looking for an assistant vice chancellor of government relations. And outside of not knowing what a chancellor does,
what does a vice chancellor? I was just gonna say, what does a vice chancellor do?
You know, the people want to know. So a vice within the hierarchy, right? We don't have a president. We have a chancellor. Right. And so it would be strange to have a chancellor and a vice president. And so they have vice chancellors who fall underneath the chancellor, and then assistant or associate vice chancellor fall underneath them. And so I'm the assistant vice chancellor now for effectively government relations. It's for city and community relations, but government affairs. And so I report directly into the vice chancellor, who reports into the chancellor. Big shout out to John Irwin. Vice Chancellor's a great guy, and Chancellor Collins. And so they wanted someone who could liaise between their institution and the community. And during the interview process, I was very sort of candid about a couple of things, right? Like, I am a pain in the butt. I'm going to push us to be better and do more in the community than I think we've done, because I think we have capacity for that. And also, like, as a person, I try to build bridges. That's who I am. That's when I'm at my best. I try to find connections that maybe some others don't see. And so I'm going to try to do that for the institution. And this is my 4th year there, which is fascinating.
4 years already?
Man, you telling me, it flies.
Wow.
It flies. Yeah, I
It is
couldn't
fast, yeah.
connect my beard when I started. I still can't, but like it looks better now. So that's
More filled in.
that's helpful. Yeah.
You gotta get the accentuations, bro. They spray that in.
Yeah, I need that. I need that.
They bless me with that. Yeah, because my stuff is real Anthony Hamilton looking.
That's amazing, little things.
For those that know Anthony Hamilton, look him up. You see his beard.
Ché, so Ron and I have talked a lot about throughout the various episodes of our own evolution and learning about being leaders and attempting to create even organizational and structural change in our own organizations, and then this external factor out in our community too. And I know I would admit, and I think you'd agree, like we're flawed in learning about it. Like
for sure.
Yeah. And just kind of learning as we go too. But you work for an incredibly large institution. And as leaders, often our motivation is change. Like how do we make a difference? How do we build culture? How do we engage staff? And it's a really hard thing to do. But you're in a role where you're liaising outside and in a huge institution. What's been your experience in learning of, like, as you said, you self-described pain in the ass. Like, what have been some of the shifts you've seen in a big institution like that? And like, what does that cycle look like, or the arc?
I think one of the most important things I did when I started at the institution was, for the first year, I didn't try to implement anything. Right, I was very intentional about just sort of listening and learning and figuring things out. Right, from like where the restrooms are to like what makes people tick. I think that so often people go into spaces and they assume that because you're in a leadership role or a managerial role that you are the same as every other leader or manager. Right, you have the same priorities, which is just let's move onward, let's figure out progress, let's figure out the bottom line. Right, but everyone is motivated by different things. And so it's important to understand the people who are sort of at the same level above you and sort of the people who are reporting into you, what matters to them, right? Why are you here? And it's a question that I asked very bluntly of many people, right? I'm a mentor in our on-campus mentoring program, and I ask every single one of my mentees that question first. Why are you here? Where do you want to go? Because it's only through that I can figure out how to even mentor you, right? I can't assume one size fits all. And so in that first year, I think I learned a lot from the chancellor, from the other vice chancellors, from other AVCs, all the way to like our custodial crew and like our pub safe crew, which shout out to them because they're amazing. They're so funny. But like I asked kind of, how do things work here? And after ascertaining that information, then I was like, okay, here's some things I want to see shift. And part of that is working through leadership, figuring out sort of how this ties into some of the mission values of our institution. But part of that is working with the folks on the ground, the project managers and others, and figuring out, well, how do we actually actualize this, right? It's one thing to have a grandiose idea. It's another to put it into practice. And so, like, where's our capacity for making this thing happen? Who are our partners, internal and external? And then, like, what problem are we solving? Or candidly, when it comes to internal conversation, are we just making more problems, right? And sometimes you have to have that conversation, right? This is the thing we want to do, we want to see, we think it looks good. Are we causing problems for others? And if we are, okay, well, how do we address that as well? We can't just pretend like we're not.
Yeah, there's a ripple effect of that. And we see it here in our own growth of our organization. And you've shared examples and stories too in your size organization. In terms of like intergenerational inclusion and creating belonging, is you have pains in the asses who sometimes may or may not take time to understand how something does and doesn't work, and ideally wanting to be responsive to new ideas and not that person that just shuts. I never want to shut someone down. I always want to say either yes and no, not now, or no because. And that sometimes there's a sense of urgency on the other end that you can't produce fast enough for the change.
Sure.
And so I have you faced that as someone that you are, you're in a significant role, but in a hierarchy, coming in hot with ideas, but taking time to learn. Like, how do those conversations happen?
Yeah, it firmly depends on what the conversation is about. But because I've seen things move faster than I thought they would, right? And there are other things that I've seen move at a snail's pace that I was kind of hoping that will move a little quicker, right? I think a good example, I'm wearing a crew neck sweater for Dynamic Futures, right? Which is a behavioral health program.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I didn't see that swag. I got a hat last year.
Did you not get a sweater? I got you.
Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
I didn't get nothing.
Well, we got to get you in first, brother.
We're partners on Dynamic Futures. I do want to talk about that too. But yeah.
And so this idea came about truly in spring of 2022. And then by the summer of 22, we had 13 students at Worcester State, right? Like that's extremely fast to develop a program, right? That's now going to its third year. And then there are other sort of partnerships that you would think, oh yeah, we should be able to pull that off pretty quickly. It's fully internal. And we're still working on it a few years later, right? Because there's just so many different stakeholders. And what I think I found is that, right, you have to go in with sort of no assumption that we'll be able to actualize something as fast as you kind of may want. But, right, I think when you move with intention, right, you sort of see that it's better to do it right than to do it quickly.
Yeah.
And that's something I found, right? We're working on a couple of projects right now with some doctors, it was some that involve potential international sort of partners. And as much as I want it to be done now, I would much rather us figure out the policies and procedures necessary to ensure that it's sustainable and that we can do it well over 5-10 years than do a one-off, get sort of attention for it, and then it's like, oh, we can't even do this again because we haven't figured out the actual nitty-gritty pieces.
Yeah.
One of the things you just talked about right there that I think would be great to open up a little bit more, especially even in our space, nonprofit, trying to move issues forward, multiple stakeholders. You worked in government, now you're at a very large institution. Talk about how you pull together multiple stakeholders, sometimes with competing interests, to try to move an objective or a project forward. Like, talk about what that's like.
Or that some that don't want to see something.
I'm not interested in that.
I think that we've become a society, right? And I'm speaking at a macro level, but even in our own community, you see it, right? That has become so polarized when it comes to figuring out how we get to a point, right? And sometimes folks are at the table going, well, if I'm not getting my piece of this, then I'm not assisting in moving it. And that's unfortunate, right? Because the reality of the situation is we have a multitude of problems that need solving right now, right? There are at least 8 sort of macro level problems that we have as a society that we need to sort of address in real time, right? And if you're coming to the table going, well, I'm really here for issue number 1, and someone else is going, okay, well, we can help move along issue 2, and you go, nah, I'm here for issue 1. You're part of the issue, right? Like that's problematic, right? We need to figure out how do we pool resources and figure out how to move things forward across the board because we have so many of these sort of issues. And so I think that when you have multiple stakeholders, what's really important is to remind them that quite often we have way more in common that we're trying to move forward, right, than not. And so how do we all see it through this lens of, okay, we have to do this piece, to the point I was making earlier. This is an actionable item we can deal with in the next 3 to 6 months. This is a necessary item, but we can't really get to it for the next 12. Do we do nothing for the next 12?
Yeah.
Or do we move this other one along in this 3 to 6? And I think that that's a difficult conversation to have, but that's why you have to trust in the people you have in position as leaders, right? Some people are just put in positions as leaders and like they tend to weed themselves out if they don't really belong in that position. But the folks that sort of deserve to be in that space, the people who are working toward it, the people who are trying to figure out how to reach forward and backward, the people who are pulling folks up, those that are really trying to work with others. When you see those people, you come across those people. You two are 2 of those people, candidly. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting here. I really do mean that.
There's been no payment made.
No, of course not. But when
we're not even giving you that cell, sir.
It's fine. I've just been staring at it the whole time. but when you come across those people, I think it's important that they're in the roles that they're in because they do figure out how to coalition build, right? And that is a necessary step in any sort of eventual change.
I think that's what I have come to more recent realization in this role is because I'm naturally a people pleaser, right? I'm an ENFJ. Yeah. And so I have a disposition who grew up Catholic. So it wasn't like a speak when spoken to type of household, but it was because I'm your mother. And I've stated a couple of times, like I lack cynicism sometimes. I don't question, which is probably why I failed out of law school. The Socratic method just doesn't come natural to me as it does some other people. But I think it's been more recent where I realize in my value, like I'm in it to play the long game, you know? And when there's a lot of, when there's pushback on the short game, I have had to question like, oh, is it because someone doesn't like me? Is it because I did something wrong or I'm not communicating? So I do a lot of like self-reflection, and I've only more recently come to realize like I just got to keep pushing and plotting because the consensus building and the necessary diplomacy of like give and take and building that consensus for the long goal game. Because to your point, there's so much more mutual interest in goals than there is disparate, but we've been so polarized, fixated on the disparate part that we have not seen a lot of the issues in the long game.
But I take that to the macro conversation too, is like what part of our society has made us think that it is a scarcity mindset in which my issue versus your issue is really what we need to be talking about, when really there's a macro issue out here. I was just talking about this with one of my staff members the other day in regards to, hey, this challenge of working with returning citizens and those who are in the criminal activity that we're helping as well, like they're not against each other. Like these things are under the same umbrella, and how do we help? You know, I was talking to another friend about we were just talking about this before we came on, with the influx of immigrants coming into New England City, the country as a whole, right? Also for us is that in our work for returning citizens, this shout out to Andy Peck, Undersecretary Reedy, and everyone at Executive Office of Public Safety here in Massachusetts, we're shifting the way that we're handling our carceral systems. And so there's going to be an influx of returning citizens at the same time. And they all need housing. They all need support. And it'd be easy to say, well, no, they need support. They need the support. But I'm looking also broadly at, and this is contrived, I get it, but there are a number of empty parcels and empty buildings that are sitting all over our city and all over our state. But like we have this issue that we're dealing with, right? But I'd have you say, well, it's their fault, they're taking it from me. And no, it's your fault, you're taking it from me. Whoa, right? There's a broader issue here.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about this in the context of funding too, in the scarcity mindset, like that, as if we're all competing for one slice of the pie versus thinking about like, well, what's the pie doing? You know, what's the pie feeding big, and where those
What kind of
points
pie is it first though?
Well, I'm a big
Sweet
fan
potato,
of
pumpkin?
I don't mind a pumpkin pie. I like chocolate cream pie.
Okay.
My grandmother, my Nana used to make and my Aunt Marie used to make a mean chocolate cream pie.
What kind of pie you do?
I'm not a big pie person, dog.
Not even apple with the ice cream?
Nah, like you know what I mean? Like I'll if someone gives me a slice of pie, I'm not rude, you know? But like generally, nah, I'm not a big pie person.
Or you're just not a sweet person?
You know what's funny? I'm the kid who would like blow out his candles on a cake and be like, y'all good. I'm not a big cake. I'm not really a big sweet.
Do you go for
I love ice cream.
Savory?
No, like I love ice cream.
Okay.
But like that's that.
This is a loaded question, but do you have a favorite ice cream place around here?
My favorite ice cream place was Wooberry.
I know, bro.
Yeah, that's shout out to Brendan. Like that was my place. I'll go to all the other places like in the summertime.
I like Coolix.
Yeah, I think they're closed now.
They're only closed for the season.
In the summer, yeah. Right,
Okay.
Yeah,
I saw them
they
like
reopened.
boarding
They'll
some
reopen
things.
soon,
I was
probably.
heartbroken.
Oh yeah, no, he shuts down during the winter.
You know who I love honestly? Jerry's. And you know why I like Jerry's? Because
The truck?
yeah, but this is
Soft
why,
serve?
right? Yeah,
The double cone soft
Not
serve?
just that, but there's like where I grew up.
Twist.
There was nothing better than being outside in the summertime and you hear that ice cream truck,
Yeah, come
and
on.
it's like, ooh, I gotta run up and get this.
Yeah.
Right? Like
It's one of the last. I mean, Jerry's has been around a long time, but I think it's one of the last soft serves.
Yeah, it has to be.
Coolix has good soft, and you can pick whatever you
flavors.
want.
Yeah, it's just not out the truck. Like, did you know that different regions have different ice cream songs?
No.
Oh no!
I thought everyone had the same ice cream
It's the
truck
same
song growing up.
song.
Nah, bro. If you go to different parts of the country, there are different songs that play in
I'm having
different
a hard time
communities.
thinking of ours right now, but
We'll play it. We'll find it. We'll play it at this point. Yeah.
Did you ever hear? Speaking of local, no, God, here we go. The like New England or regional tunes. Have you ever heard the brown eggs are local eggs and local eggs are fresh? Anybody? I've been in a long dispute with a friend about that. No? Anybody?
I heard something similar.
It's a
but it
New England farmers.
No, I'm not familiar with that, but I'm familiar when it was like, say something like brown men are local.
No, that's no. I'm talking about,
Local men.
there's something. Jesus. I guess I walked into that one.
Yeah.
But there was an advertisement tune. You know, like the same with the pumps and the sneakers. No.
Okay. Nah.
You have all the jingles though.
You guys
I gotta
both were.
respect that.
I felt the searing look at
But
me.
also,
But
you are a Worcesterite.
no, well, this is
I'm a
new. This is
transplant.
what to the regional tune thing. This was a New England farmer
Oh, see, I'm not.
advertisement, and yeah.
Yeah. No, but I do know that if you don't think Ron and I are gonna make a brown men song now, you're insane.
I'm foolish to
That's-
think
yeah.
that I didn't walk into that, but I was
No.
thinking more commercial tunes,
Nope.
regional to your regional point, affect point.
2025 Worcester Music Awards coming to me and Ron. I bet
Do
that.
not edit this out, Mario. I stand by the advertisement. Now I have to go look at the history of why they might have been singing that song.
Just got controversial.
Oh God. Where were we?
I was
talking about funding.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
pie. It started with pie. Forget, I'm not eating pie anymore either. All right, and I'm not because I've been going to the gym. But
Strawberry rhubarb pie.
Ooh, rhubarb is tart.
So I didn't know anything. Talk about cultural differences, right? I had no idea that was even a thing, rhubarb. I didn't know what it was. And one of my friends, really, really sweet girl, I was over at her house, her grandma was like, I made strawberry rhubarb pie. And I was like, you made what? And she was like, strawberry rhubarb pie, you gotta have some. And I didn't enjoy it at all. But what I will
did you
say,
eat it? Did you?
Of course.
Because grandma made it.
Like Ché said,
Yeah.
grandma
Be polite,
pie.
yeah.
I ain't gonna be like, nah, dog. Like, come on, my mom, But it was interesting. It's just talk about cultural differences. And they loved it. It was something they make every year, cultural strawberry rhubarb pie. So it was like sweet and like you said, a little bitter,
tart.
little tart at the same time. So shout out to the strawberry rhubarb pie
God.
people.
Can you hear that? It's my fault. This is all my fault.
So
This
look,
is mine. I own it.
One of the things we do talk about are innovative solutions to some of these complex problems on the ripple effect. And so one of the things I know that UMass committed to some years ago was this anchor mission. Talk a little bit about anchor mission. And I know that in certain aspects it has gotten some applause and it has gotten some criticism. Here's the thing too, whenever you do anything, if you make a decision, you can't make a decision based on people getting upset at you.
Right. No, that's absolutely.
Right? Like
yes.
I was in a meeting recently and it was like, hey.
Well, then it's not an authentic decision at that point.
I was in a meeting recently
Yeah.
and we were like, we should do this. And they were like, well, if we do that though, then like they'll get upset. Okay, but is it the right thing to do? Yeah, but they'll be upset.
So that's where my head is at, and this is not just recent. This is like over the last couple of years, thinking about like my role in that and why I react that way. It's because if I get the people pleasing, or like, it's like because I haven't had a conversation with that person.
Valid.
Right? Or that, or our organizations have had like light, I would say, territorial little conflicts, and to my knowledge, I think we've figured it out.
I got a list of things.
There you go. Yeah, but that happens. I think it's motivated a little bit by wanting, you're accountable to your mission. You want to do the work. You don't want someone to get in your way. But then, how do you think about like, wait a minute, why are we so tense? We haven't had these conversations. We should have the conversation. So I've learned that a little bit better of like, wait, why are we like
not
arms up about this? Yeah. And just moving the conversation toward the mutual goal versus like, why are we fighting over this territorial thing when it's about helping people in general? Yeah.
I think there's some ego for me personally that shows up in that as well.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I'm
the hero of my own story always.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge issue. That is an underlying issue, is the desire and need for it through your ego for the recognition and the ownership of it. I think that's really normal and natural because you're proud of X, Y, or Z, but I think we've got to be able to let go of the me part of this and like, how do I engage with others around the mutual goal?
If I may, and this, I'm going to tackle both that statement and what you asked me right now, right? So I'm so happy that came up about the anchor mission because that is primarily a UMass memorial sort of ideology. Right?
Just a quick, this is not a pie digression, but do you constantly find having yourself to distinguish between the two?
Sort of, right?
Yeah.
So my counterpart, or our office's counterpart at Memorial, is a guy, Jim Leary, and most people know
Great
Jim,
guy.
right? Awesome guy, right? Love Jim.
Shout out Jim.
And we always joke about, when I get an email that's really a Jim email, or Jim gets an email that's really like an us email. And like majority of people don't care, right? Like they see UMass as an entire block over there, and they're just like UMass. They don't understand the delineation
especially
between.
if you grew up here,
right?
What is the difference? Yeah.
And so the beauty of that is that I do think it provides opportunities for conversation and collaboration quite often. But every once in a while, you get a question about like anchor mission, and I'm like, oh, that's not really us. That's more the UMass Medical Center side of it. Mm-hmm. And yet, right, I think that what does align is that there's a general ideology, I think, from leadership, right? Of, hey, I'm an expert in this, and I think we can make an impact here, right? And I know a lot of the anchor mission stuff around social determinants of health, or determination of need, comes through that lens of here's what we can do X. And to your point, there's always going to be someone who goes, well, you should have done Y, right? It doesn't negate the good in X, but like we think you should have done Y.
Yeah, there's always opportunity costs.
For sure. Yeah. For sure, right? And any decision that's made, right? One of the things that I loved that I learned in my program at Clark was that in any decision that's being made, right, there are winners and losers, right? And you should look at that as you're making said decision, right? Even if you think this is a total win-win-win for everyone, it's impossible, right? Because if you're giving money here, you're not giving money to these people making requests. So they do end up losing in the end of the day, right? And I think not enough people are being intentional with that sort of thought. But to your point around like ego and how we think of things, I think it's not just also a personal thing around ego. We have a society that says that the more wins you get publicly, right, the smarter you are, the better leader you are, the more important you are. That's how you make those lists and those other things, right?
Yes.
And so it's not necessarily just an internal thing. Externally, you're getting that sort of praise, approval, stamping that you are truly who you believe you are, right? That validation part. And so I think that it's also important for us to think about that at a macro level as well, right? Like, where do societal standards play a role in this, right? Is that person being selfish with their thought process, or is that person seemingly on their last legs and like, this is the thing that's going to get them back in the space where they're back in those conversations, right? Is that a person who's being overly ambitious, or does that person know that as a new person in our community or a young person in our community, they're not going to be heard in a certain way unless they're able to prove their worth, that they're an asset. And they do that by getting X amount of thing, right? Like, I get it. I've been that young person who is like, I have to work extra hard. I need to be in this room. Right? I'm so happy I got this recognition.
Is that compounded by being a black man?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, right? Like, part of it, and this is sort of like a thing that it's personal and yet society has an impact on it, right? There's who you believe you are. There's who others believe you are. And then there's who you believe others believe you are.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like, all three of those things are happening simultaneously. And so when you step into a room, there's not just a question of, do I think I deserve to be here? It's do they think I deserve to be here? And do I think that they think I deserve to be here? And so when you navigate those spaces, you're constantly in this give and take, trying to make sure that like you deserve to be in said room. And there are people who will say, oh, I just know I deserve to be there. And kudos to those people, right? Because I wasn't one of those people. I often had that imposter syndrome, right? But I've realized over time, and I've said this to a lot of like young people, I only know like amazing people that have imposter syndrome. Right? Like I know people sometimes where I'm like, you should have a little imposter syndrome. Like, you should have a little something that tells you not to say that, right? And like, they don't. Those people are just flying off at the mouth and on the hinge. But the people who are doing like good, intentional, impactful work are always the people who have to second guess themselves.
Yeah, I don't know any different. I think I don't know how to go through life without self-assessing. And I think the important line for your self-care, we've talked a lot about self-care offline, and you and I too, and distinguishing the line between self-awareness and self-deprecation, because your saboteur will just absolutely consume you otherwise, and then that's a whole other lane you're in.
For sure.
And I think, I don't know how to not. If you're not that you're, I second guess, but I second guess in like, if I think back 6 months, I call it my other self. 6 months ago, was I thinking the same thing? Yes. And my values haven't changed. Maybe my approach has changed a little bit, or I learned something, or I I added another layer of conversation to it, and I got more perspective. But if you're not learning, you're not living, you know?
But you it's funny because earlier you talked about the Socratic method not coming easy to you, but it was Socrates who said the unexamined life is not worth living. Right?
So good at quotes.
He really is amazing.
Continuously being able to look at and evaluate. So it brings me to this other point. Like, it's interesting because governance, society structure, and then even what you were talking about, those multiple conversations going on. Where do you find your values, right? Because like all these things can kind of shift your wind, blow. And for me, like values kind of anchor you in all of this. And we talked about me and Marybeth and you even came on and mentioned about how your family impacted a lot of those, how you see the world, how there's a kind of an onus and a commitment to give back. So like, how do values play into some of these decisions for you in these spaces?
Yeah, I think they're huge. You know, I think that, you know, my grandmother used to say this thing that was, no matter where you go, remember what you came for and get what you came for. No matter where you go, get what you came for. And I think that's important to remember, right? Like, so often you end up in rooms you never thought you'd be in, and all of a sudden you forget why you even got in that room. You're just like, I'm happy to be. This is amazing,
for sure,
right? But there's the goal, you know. And I think that it's also important to remember that like the goal may not be the mission, right? And I know that sounds sort of counterintuitive, right? But sometimes the goal within a certain space is to meet that right person, is to connect with these people, right? That's not the overall mission. Right. You got more things you want to accomplish, right? But you have to break it down to these sort of micro goals sometimes to make sure that you can move appropriately.
Well, relationships. I mean, the relationship building, you're not out there a rogue.
Right.
You know?
Right. Like that, you do more with the team than by yourself. And so for me, there are a bunch of sort of values that got instilled in me when I was young that I carry forth to this day. You know what I mean? Like a few people have heard me talk about my grandmother and how like she cleaned houses growing up. And so like, one, it's important for me to always recognize that like the service workers in our community who are often like, unsung, like need to get their praise because they're doing the stuff that we're not often thinking about. But two, I know what it's like to watch somebody sort of struggle through that process, and I know that struggle that she did and then that my mom subsequently did was so that my brother and I could live the lives that we get to live right now. And so for me, not having any children of my own, so to speak, yet, it's important for me to try to do things that I think are going to leave a lasting impact for whoever comes after me, right? Whoever that next proverbial Ché is out there, to make sure that they have not necessarily just like an easier time, because what's easy or difficult is different depending on the person, but that they at least have a more accessible, opportunity that I might have, that they're more aware of opportunities out there than I was, because it saddens me when I see these opportunities come forth and people are like, I had no idea this was a thing. And I'm like, so-and-so.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's unfortunate that you weren't aware of that. And so we got to be better about spreading that, which goes back to the idea of, right, like some people like hoarding opportunities or ideas and such. And it's like, no, we gotta figure out how we can build something.
Yeah, share it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. I feel like what we're talking about has been touched on in so many different episodes so far of just what we've learned about ourselves and also how we're still learning. But we have people that we're responsible for. Well, you have 2 lives that you're responsible for in your life.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any.
Talk about
I have
Socratic. Talk about those Socratic method. I got caught in that yesterday with my youngest son Isaiah because he doesn't like to take baths. He doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't like to clean. It's like it's a.
How old is he? 9, 8,
10.
Or 9?
It's a big impediment to his video game playing, and so the fact that he went, and my man was going for like maybe 30 seconds. And he came back. He was like, no, I showered. And I was like, bro, impossible. Right? And so I'm telling him to go back in. And so because it's my son, he goes, Dad, how long do you think a typical shower would take? Right? Because he's trying to get to, why can't I take it as quick as you thought I did? So he's trying to find this method. I was like, bro, it don't matter. You need to go get clean. So sorry, but that's what made me think about.
You're like, let me smell your breath, dude.
Bro, no, he's 10, and so he's still at that age. Man, at some point he's gonna listen to this and be embarrassed, but he's still at that point where you can just do a quick swipe of the underarm, and then you know if it was accomplished or not.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But anyway, so I have those 2, and you were talking about
just the staff,
for
and we that line we talked about that. I think it was the aggressive pedestrian episode. That kind of fine line of pressing, like we are at work. If you're really being your authentic self, then experiences in your life, good, bad, or otherwise, are shaping your reaction or proactivity in something. And especially when you have younger staff, but this is true across all age groups, is in building culture, recognizing that you have to deal with some of your stuff too, because you're reacting to something maybe because it's akin to something else in your life that has happened or something that's come up from your childhood, and the eagerness that a young person might have to be like, we want change. I want to do this thing. I want to do it now. Why haven't you done it yet? And then how do you I want to take that energy, but also shape it, and like, how do I need us to be able to communicate around what the mutual goal is, that it may not happen immediately, and that we can work together, and that it's not a snap of the finger, but like you got to bring people's personal stuff into it also, and that's a very delicate, maybe trauma-inducing way also that you have to be really careful about and not doing that to someone at work, you know?
Well, I would say sort of two sides of it, right? On one side, and we've talked a lot about self-care, right? Like I've been reading so much more about like self-care recently, right? I finished this emotional intelligence book 2.0, which is amazing. And
I just got that from my homeboy.
Bro, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so good, right? Like I did a new listen of Atomic Habits, right? And like was reintroduced to like the idea of the Diderot effect. And so I'm like stopping all my shopping habits right now.
What's the Diderot effect?
So it's this concept.
Is it like the Zeigarnik effect?
No, that's not the Zeigarnik effect. The Zeigarnik effect is totally
kidding.
different.
So the Diderot effect is based on this person who was brilliant, right? Had an amazing library, but was poor. And so someone of affluence purchased their library for what was I think like 1,000. I don't know what the actual currency was, but effective was like 100 grand today. And so the first thing they did was they bought this like nice illustrious robe, and then they got back to their house and realized that the robe didn't match anything else they had. And so then they bought like an end table. And then they bought like some other chairs, and then they bought like some nice paintings. And over time, it's so the Diderot effect has become this term for when you purchase something that is different than everything else you have, and you feel an urge to buy other things to now match the elegance of that.
This just happened.
It happens for everyone, right? You buy a new dress, you need new
This is
shoes.
towels I talked about earlier.
That's right.
Right? But it's sort of this subconscious thing that like you buy something nice and now nothing else is good enough. And so you have to keep buying other things to match how nice that one item is. And so that's sort of it's helped me with my consumerism to some extent. Right? So like there's that side of it. But I think that the other piece of it is the perspective of understanding where people are coming from. And I don't think enough people take time to think of the other person's perspective.
For sure.
Right? When you're 17 or 18 and you want something to happen fast, you've only been alive 17, 18 years. And the first X amount of those years are you just learning to be a person. You're not fully understanding
Executive
what's happening,
isn't
right?
formed fully,
And so for you, life isn't that long. You need things to happen quickly because your perspective on it is that life is really short, right? When you have some of the people who've been around a little bit longer and you understand that perspective, you get that things take time, but it's because you've had the life experience of time and you might be young enough to understand that there's time left. I think when you go to the other end of the spectrum, you may have some people who are older, but maybe less patient because for them, time isn't on their side. Right. And so I think that that's the angle and lens you sometimes look through that thing. Like I love seeing like really fired up young people.
Facts.
Not just because like I've been a young fired up person, but because I also hope that they don't lose said fire.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
But life has a way of, right, like you may settle down, you may have more work at your job, you may have a partner who needs more time and attention, you may get kids who need time and attention, you may have a parent that gets sick and older and so you're taking care of them. So many factors of your life. You might find a board that you want to volunteer for that takes up more of your time that's still adjacent to the cause, but isn't you being outside marching for said cause, right? And so all these other things happen and now you're like, wait, what happened to...
I think that's my challenge. Like as here, my challenge is I want to harness the energy, right? And I don't want it to dissipate because I'm 45. I feel like I'm in that point in my own career where like I was like the eager person, and now because to exactly what you're saying, as I'm thinking about my life ahead, I got like 20 years left in my career maybe before hopefully my wife and I retire to Brazil somewhere. If you haven't gone to Brazil yet, I know you're a world traveler also.
That's on the list.
But I want to harness the energy and also bring some of the pragmatism to it too. For sure. In that, and because there's learning in it. There's learning in the energy also. I can learn from the person that has maybe more energy and eagerness and urgency than I do in that moment, but also I could see how that person can shape into an incredible leader over time and like bring some of the pragmatism to it without being like, we've always done it this way. I hate that answer.
That's actually
time is not a factor of excellence in my opinion. Yeah.
Well said. My Clifton Strengths tells me that I will never be that person that is okay with the status quo. Like I'm gonna be a contrarian. Even if I agree with the point. Like I'm not just gonna be there to go along with it. Just for the sake of the conversation, to think through it more critically. And I think one of the things that you're talking about, I love the intergenerational conversation that we're having right now because of that. Like for me, some of the young people, they haven't been jaded by being shut down or running up against some of the barriers and some of the things that are there. Yeah. And so it's just like, push through that. I was curious also about sometimes this idea that our grassroots movements, the young people marching, are in opposition to some of the policy and administrative changes, right? Like, hey, we're not on the same page. Where does that come from? How do we bridge that together and make a better understanding of, like, to that point, like, we talked about this multiple times.
For sure.
Where we are all on the same mission, right? We are at different spaces and in different places in this movement. Actually, I like that idea better. I was just reading this on one of the nonprofit sites about not building organizations, but building movements, in the subtle difference in what building a movement looks like. And so what we're talking about right now from an intergenerational standpoint, to me, is more about how do you create a movement? And my question is, how do we merge those two together? Our policy changes, not being disparate from these young people and not exploiting young folks. Like, let me just go bring someone and throw them up in here because they really passionate, they got a good voice, and people are tired of hearing mine, to really move something together to create a movement. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I don't. You should answer that as our guest, and then I
feel like you gotta.
I feel it's a little bit of a tug of war. I feel like, and you and I have talked about this in the early stages of your starting up LL. And I've used the colloquial term of like, you got to play the game. Like, I get that you want to be disruptive, but you also got to be in the game a little bit to change it. And as frustrating as those things are, you know, like trying to be the I like the idea of being an intermediary because I don't want to overexpose someone unnecessarily, but I want to be able to, ally or align and elevate with, someone has a good idea. I don't care how old you are, I don't care how long you've been doing something. But I know that there's threat to that too. The reality is there's threat to that person or whatever they might be saying, or in that. So trying to be an intermediary of like, all right, here's some strategy that can give you longevity in the movement versus, unfortunately, in the culture and society that we do operate in, because it is so polarized, you don't want that person to get crushed without support, right? So that I like the role of intermediary, and I feel like my experience and my age allows me to play a little bit of the tug of war.
You play it well. And
also push, I'm certain there are people listening to this would say I've pushed some buttons, but also giving some support to the eagerness of someone that has a good idea, but that they can sustain that without being unfairly labeled as a, loud disrupt, whatever it is,
A radical.
A radical, yeah. And I don't know why that's a bad term either sometimes, but like, how do you balance that? Because you want sustained movement and change. Otherwise, I don't know. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing just because we've always done it. And that's just not a satisfying answer for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I also I think the idea of being radical is fascinating to me, right? Because time kind of tells you where that stands, right? Martin Luther King Jr. has been one of the most watered down leaders in our society, right? Like he's been boiled down to just treat everyone the way you want to be treated, and hopefully everyone's equal, right?
And I have a dream. Those are the two things.
And it's like that person was considered radical while he was alive, so much so that he was assassinated. Yeah. And yet, now here we are 40 years later, it's like, no, he was just great. Everyone loved him. He's a cool guy.
No one liked it when he was out there.
Right.
His approval ratings were like 30%.
Right. And so it's like the idea of being radical is fascinating because history rewrites that time and time again, depending on whether you're on the proverbial winning or losing side of what we look back on. And so I think that at the end of the day, like to your original point, I think it's about understanding what the movement is about and what the mission of said movement is. Right. But also understanding that the proverbial lines that get drawn sometimes move over time as well. Right. Like what we would consider a conservative or a liberal today
way different
isn't what a conservative or liberal was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Right. That line kind of keeps moving. And while there's some people who have consistently been on whatever side they've chosen, that line for a lot of people in the proverbial middle has moved. Right. And so I think having very real and candid conversation about that is one thing. But also at the end of the day, doesn't matter. Right? Like, let's talk about something like housing, where it's like, should all people have affordable housing? Right? And I think if you ask individuals that question, right, without microphones and just most people would say, yeah, for sure. Right? Like that should be a right that people have. But then when you talk about enacting policy changes, well, then that's where you get into radical things.
Wait a second.
Right? Because at the end of the day, back to your pie analogy, right?
From somebody.
If you're giving a piece here, you're missing a piece here. And I love when there are people who are like, well, we shouldn't use pie because that's not and it's like in an ideological world, right, of course we shouldn't use that. But in reality, there is a pie. There's a finite amount of money right now. Yeah. Right? And so like you have to operate within that system.
Yes.
But to do so, you have to understand said system.
Right.
And that's what I think a lot of people get like miss out on. A lot of people have strong opinions, and they should. Do your own. Have an opinion about whatever you want. Yeah. But to have an informed opinion, you have to actually understand what you're talking about. Right. And so you need to understand the system, the systemic pressures, the sort of overlying structure of what it is you're commenting on. And then like, fine, let them fly. But for those who can't regurgitate that stuff back to you, then you're just giving a thought, and that's fine. But like, don't then push that off as you being an expert in something that like you don't necessarily know.
And getting
what you don't
frustrating when it doesn't, and nothing changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of regurgitating, the other day I accidentally swallowed some Scrabble tiles, and I've been having like these adverse vowel movements. And the next time I go to the restroom,
vowel movements is hilarious. What were the letters?
A, X, Y, and Q.
Okay. Yeah. You missed out on some big points.
I did.
Yeah.
But, here's the thing. Next time I go to the bathroom, it could spell disaster. That's what I'm nervous about. Yeah.
Is this how we're ending? This is how we're ending it?
I'm here for it.
No, I refuse. I refuse only because
I had that in the pocket.
I think it's solid.
We cannot end with that dad joke.
No.
I would give it a triple word score.
It would be a disservice if we did not, while Ché Anderson is here, talk about shoes.
I agree. 100%.
Because while I may be known for my heels, which by the way, these are cute
you can
heels
take it off
today.
and like bring it up.
I know. I can't.
Can you? I can help you.
I said they have like Takashi Murakami vibes. I love those.
These are festive. It's springy.
Look at that.
We're still stained glassing today. We're gonna have a party, confetti. That's happening today because you guys were gonna be here. I put my party shoes on.
Those are fresh.
I'm also going to get my CPAP machine today, so I was feeling like I needed to be snazzy to go get that because I'm getting a CPAP machine, and I needed to just really
Are you doing the full mouth? Or
I don't know.
or
We're gonna
nostril
figure it out later today of what my options are.
I used to have one of those.
Well, I'm not looking forward to it, but this is why I'm going to the gym because my doctor said if I just lose some weight, it'll go away. So
I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you too, and we definitely want to talk about shoes.
Yes,
Ché knows
that's
about
what
shoes.
we're starting. Yeah,
is the gym is dope, but the diet.
No, yeah. Well, I'm shifting that also. Yeah, I'm doing both.
Big time.
I was down 10 pounds. I was doing, and then I don't know, water weight this week. I don't know. I was good. I didn't drink. I didn't eat bad things. I don't know what happened, but anyway. So, as in my age of my own little saboteur talking today, I was like, you are going to wear snazzy party shoes today because you are going to get an old lady machine, and I needed to just switch up the.
I got mine when I was 27.
Yeah, I've been relegated to like sleeping in the attic at this point with the dog because the dog also snores. So I just want my I call it the marriage saving machine because I'm just like, I just want, Anyway, shoes, Ché, as much as I may be known for my heels, I think as soon as I know when I see you, I'm like, Ché, so great to see you. I'm looking right at what shoes you're wearing. Yeah. And you're not brand. You're not just one brand.
No. I mean, you see me a lot more in New Balance right now because we got some stuff in the works, and so shout out to them. But overall, I love sneakers. Since I was a kid, I always have. And one of the things that I was very intentional when I changed roles from the city was I didn't want to wear traditional dress shoes.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna wear sneakers with a suit when I have to, and like that's it. And I've worn dress shoes 4 times in the last 4 years, and 2 of those times were weddings, and people going, "Hey, I know you. You better wear some shoes to my wedding." Like, you're right, because I was gonna wear sneakers.
It's a good friend. That's a good friend.
But yeah, no, I think that one of the things that I'm big on is storytelling.
Right.
I think that it's important to know people's stories, to understand their why. Like that's really, really essential for me. And footwear tells you a ton, not just about people, but also the footwear itself has so much laid within the stories, and so. There's so many pairs of sneakers that I love, not just because they look cool, but because the process by which they had to go through to become an actualized item, I think are fascinating. And so that's huge for me.
It's big. How many pairs of sneakers would you say you own?
I know the number right now because someone asked me this question and I got it downside. I only have, and please forgive me by saying it. No
judgment. This is no judgment.
Because I have 156 pairs. Right.
Is there room for those? Like, how do you store them?
The closet is full, and I have like these clear boxes that sort of take up.
Okay, so you can see. Are they organized by color?
So they're organized by brand.
Okay.
If they're in a box, and if they're not in the box, then they are organized by color.
Okay, because I I probably have 100 pairs of shoes.
See, you get
but
it.
they're by seasonal colors, I would say.
Oh yeah,
Hence
no.
my
colors.
spring shoe wear right
Got it.
now. Yeah,
Gotcha.
I wouldn't wear these in the dead of winter.
I would.
I would do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
For
well,
sure.
just for spring. That's how I have winter. I have winter heels.
I know, but see, like again, I'm a contrarian. So like, if you're not supposed to wear, the white
I
pants
see.
after
Yeah.
labor, I'm gonna.
Well, you have
wearing
your
that.
kicks today. I like
I got
those.
some Pumas.
I dig 'em.
I love Pumas. I have a pair of Pumas. I love Pumas.
Yeah.
I have
Pumas
a pair.
are a narrow. I have a wide foot that spreads, so most of the Pumas typically don't really work well for me. But these ones
they're
do.
a more rigid
Same.
shoe.
Yeah,
Not
these
like
work well.
Hoka's or Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a fascinating ride on the Ripple Effect today. Ché, very glad to have you.
Thank you, Robin.
Even though we were remiss in sending you lots of prep questions, we, as expected, dove right in, navigated, wandered, came back, loved it.
I just want to say before we sign off that I appreciate you folks doing this. Not just having me on, but like I think that there are so many smart people out there who have really great conversations amongst each other. And for the two of you to see that and to make a platform out of it and give other people the opportunity to sort of be flies on the wall for those conversations, I think so much more of that needs to happen. And so I appreciate too you sort of trend setting this, and I hope that others sort of follow suit.
Appreciate it.
Thanks
We
for
are
that, brother.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
we're putting it out there.
Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket.
It's a drop in the bucket. There you go. So, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Marrio, always for being our great producer.
Make
You guys
sure
don't know, Death to Life Productions, Marrio is your man.
holds it all together. Make
Yep.
sure you like, subscribe, share.
We're on YouTube, all your favorite streaming platforms. Tell
right.
your friends, tell your mom,
That's
Yeah.
right.
tell your grandma.
Yeah,
They're gonna love it.
Tell your mom, grandmama, and all them.
right.
Let them know.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Peace.
You're listening to The Ripple Effect, a nonprofit imperative with Ron Waddell and Marybeth Campbell. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you on the next one.